Hello again, everyone. It's Mr. Most Days Off.
And I'm the WIzKid.
And we're here to talk about PopThreads.com, our newest sponsor and your online destination for all pop culture t-shirts. And right now, for our listeners, they are offering 10% off just by using the discount code Simpsons at checkout.
Woohoo!
They have some awesome Simpsons shirts. They've also got other things like old school Nickelodeon, my favorite, Legends of the Hidden Temple, and they've got us wrestling fans covered.
They also have up to the current season t-shirts from TV shows like Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead. So make sure you head over to popthreads.com right now.
Use that discount code Simpsons
so you can save a lot of dope!
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and I'm back once again to talk about The Simpsons with you. This week, we're going to be continuing our conversation we started last week with Dr. Andrew Breseño, and we're going to be covering the episode Principal Charming. Unfortunately, we did have a bit of a technical snafu this week. About 20 minutes or so of Dr. Andy's audio unfortunately got muted at some point while he was recording. So we did lose a little bit of conversation. I did splice it together without him the best I could. It sounds a little bit weird in spots. I do apologize, but the majority of the conversation is still there. Sorry about that. Our bad. We'll try not to let that happen again down the road, but I still hope you still enjoy our episode covering Principal Charming. Let's get right back to our conversation with Dr. Andrew Breseño. All right, I think that will do it for Homer versus Lisa and the Eighth Commandment. But we've got another really, really good episode to talk about. Principal Charming, which it's a good episode, but it's a very different episode. First of all, it aired on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1991. It was actually ready a lot longer before that. Several months is what I read. It was ready several months before Valentine's Day, but they decided that they wanted to hold it off and release it since it had a somewhat romantic theme. This one had a chalkboard gag, said I will not belch national anthem, and a couch gag where they jump onto the couch and it rolls out into a couch bed. And I mentioned first appearances. We talked about one already, but we've got Hans Moleman, who apparently had a different name on his ID, Rich.
Yes, Ralph Mellish.
Wow. They listed on IMDb the squeaky voice teen, but honestly, I didn't really feel like that was the complete character at all. I think they're referencing the waiter.
Yeah, his skin is clear, so it can't be the same guy.
Yeah, exactly. It was a really weird that they listed him. However, we do get the first appearance of groundskeeper Willie, who comes to have some of the funniest lines in future episodes. And we talked about it before, but his Treehouse of Horror episode is one of my absolute favorites, where it's the spoof of Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street.
It's superb.
That whole series of episodes where he dies and everyone is really good too, and that might be the same one. But
it is the same one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all the flashbacks and all that good stuff. So
I like that Otto was in line too at the beginning, at the DMV.
I like that they were openly smoking in line at the DMV.
I really like how cigarettes are just a big part of this episode in so many ways.
Oh, they really
sure.
are.
Laramie High Tar, please. That is the brand right there.
So there's a quote on IMDb by Mike Reese talking about the staff of the writers and producers of The Simpsons. And he specifically mentions that David Stern is almost exclusively in charge of any episode. He's the writer for almost any episode that heavily features Marge, Patty, or Selma, because admittedly the rest of the writers just don't really get the Bouvier family. And David Stern seems to be the only one that really connects with them. So he is the writer for this episode, and like I mentioned, almost any other episode that ever features Patty, Selma, or Marge. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
That is really
well. That's also a good point. It's a good point for kind of a continuity effect as well, because if he gets the characters, then yeah, you don't want someone else stepping in and writing those scenes if they don't know how they're supposed to respond to certain phrases and things like that.
Especially when they admit to not getting them.
Exactly.
And I feel like this guy is writing for heavy backstory in a way a lot of the other episodes just don't seem concerned with it. But like, there's a lot of like history here that's sort of off camera, but really weighs on this, right? Like, not even getting into Barney's past in the military, which, by the way, Barney's a veteran. What?
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That surprised me.
But like everyone seems to have like a background that's really important, right? We see all these pictures in their photo album for trips that never seem to matter, like that don't come up, and there's a lot there, right?
That's a running theme with them. They're always seemingly traveling, because I think there's several episodes where they reference the idea of showing Homer and Marge slides, and Homer's always like, ugh. I think that's actually what happens in the Treehouse of Horror. Well, yeah, that actually, we already went over that one. You're right. Krusty gets busted, that happens. But I think that happens again in the Treehouse of Horror episode where Homer actually goes into the third dimension. He's trying to escape Patty and Selma's slideshow, if I remember correctly. But we haven't gotten to that episode, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. But I think I remember that.
I remember that happening. Yeah.
That's a fun episode.
It is.
It is a really good episode, yeah. But this episode is fun, too. And it opens with Homer having a conversation with Barney, the veteran, we'll find out later. And Barney's telling him all about Greasy Joe's bottomless barbecue. And Homer is pretty fucking excited about this, actually.
Most definitely. Who wouldn't be? I mean...
Of course, yeah, true. He goes in to talk to Marge about it, who's actually exercising. And Marge has concerns because Homer had agreed to limit his pork servings to only 6 per week.
Who could do such an inhuman thing to themselves? Only eat pork 6 times a week. That's, I mean, I don't know how I would live on such standards. That's all. Yeah, that doesn't even make, but fine. So, have we already had the episode where they get thrown out of the fish restaurant that's all you can eat?
No, we haven't got there yet.
Okay,
we did the sushi episode recently where Homer orders the fugu, which is the poisonous sushi, and he did order every single piece of sushi available, which is how he decided to try the fugu, because it was literally the only thing he hadn't had. But we have not gotten the one where he gets kicked out. That's where he's taken out in an ambulance. A little bit different.
Well, there are episodes that have been established already where he eats everything in sight at a restaurant. That I think the season 1 finale, or first episode ever, they go out. I thought they went to a fish restaurant before they were going to their hotel room. So they've already put it in there that he's a bit of an overeater, I guess you could say.
Sure.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember getting kicked out, but I could be
Well,
mistaken,
there's a whole episode at some point where they go to the Sea Captain's seafood restaurant.
The Flying Dutchman.
Yes, and it's supposed to be all you can eat, but they get thrown out early, and then they go to small claims court over it. Lionel Hutz sues them with the line, now does this sound like a man, the actions of a man who has had all he could eat? So I think it's kind of interesting that they like set that up, or like, I don't know, it's like they came back to that idea later on if that hasn't occurred yet, which I think is, more good writing.
For sure.
Excellentness.
We get to that scene that we had just briefly talked about a moment ago at the DMV, where we see some smokers in line, and we see Otto in line. We also see Hans Moleman in line, which I know is one of Richie's all-time favorite side characters in the Simpsons universe.
Football in the groin! Football in the groin!
We get to a scene where Selma and Patty are at a wedding of a woman and a man who she has a history with, at least partly. So they go to a flashback where Selma is sitting at a table, and a relatively good-looking Simpsons universe dude comes up to her and is like, "I would like to get to know you better. Is this seat taken?" And Patty instantly comes in and is like, "Yes," and plops down. To which he walks over and does the same thing to the woman who is now standing across from him in present day as his bride.
Well, and he makes a jab where it's like, where what would have happened if I would have met some other woman beside you, sort of thing.
Yeah, I would have married whoever I sat down next to that day.
Yeah, I was actually kind of like, ouch, jab in the stomach.
Who knows what kind of woman I could have ended up with.
Selma decides that she does, in fact, want help finding a man, and she goes to Marge privately, away from her twin, who she usually shares everything with, and asks for help. We then get to a great scene where Marge is cashing in a favor for something she had previously done for Homer.
Which was 2 vacations ago when they agreed to go to St. Louis for their vacation, so he could see a car that looked like a giant bowling pin.
And who wouldn't want to see that?
Homer looks so happy in the picture, too.
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember?
Does.
Do I? And he fondly looks at this car, which I have to say, I appreciate the artists who decided to make it a vertical bowling pin rather than horizontal. They
Yeah.
didn't go easy here.
Very, very poor choice terms of aerodynamics.
This explains why Homer comes up with a shitty idea for a car in an episode coming up pretty soon.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought about that. The Homer.
Oh yeah, I think that's next week.
That's one of my
I think
favorites.
that's next week.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
That is a
oh my god, it's the very next episode.
Danny DeVito.
Oh, I love
Woohoo!
that episode.
So there's another really awesome scene here where they're actually talking about Patty and Selma and how I believe it's actually when Marge was talking to Selma, and I missed this, and it's one of my favorite lines where they're talking and Marge says, "Patty chose celibacy. Selma had it thrust upon her."
It's so great, right? And this is as good a point as any to bring up the irony of later things that Simpsons episodes established. Because Patty comes out of the closet as a lesbian eventually, right?
She does. It's actually, I have it written down. It's in season 14 in the episode There's Something About Marrying.
Exactly. And furthermore, Smithers is established either directly or through inference as homosexual at some point later on in the past. But in this episode, at least Homer does not know that or doesn't pick up on that.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point. That could explain her celibacy. She could have just been uncomfortable or afraid to come out in her sexual identity, and that's why she just chose to have none instead of, out herself, so to speak. But yeah, that's a good point, and she does come out later down the line, so that could be a
yeah,
big
I mean,
factor.
It's weird how well this episode doesn't necessarily get in the way of that.
Yeah.
Is what really surprised me watching it back again.
Like they already had the idea set, they just weren't making it clear.
Like they just weren't allowed to say it yet, which it's worth noting there were no gay characters on television in 1991, right?
No, there weren't. For our season 2 opener, we talked about Simpson and Delilah. It was the second episode we went over with Matthew Klickstein, our guest for the first episode. And he actually had a helper in that one named Karl. Karl was voiced by an openly gay man, Firestein. What was his name?
Harvey?
Help me out here, Rich. You got your guide right
Harvey.
there. Harvey Firestein. And he voiced Karl, who he wasn't openly gay. And in fact, there was a fun trivia fact that Matt Groening would always answer when any time he was asked as just he is what you want him to be. But, like, over the years, he's pretty obviously homosexual, we would say, and that's how the voice actor played him. And he actually has the first animated male-male homosexual kiss with Homer Simpson, and it happened a full 10 years before a real-life male-to-male kiss happened on Dawson's Creek.
Wow.
Crazy to think about it, right? That's, as we always say, Simpsons did it, so...
Simpsons did it.
Simpsons did it.
It's a fact.
For sure.
But getting back to the episode we're talking about now, I don't know why this stuck with me so much, but when Homer and Marge get home, when her sisters are watching the kids, just the image of Patty asleep on the couch snoring with her cigarette still in her hand.
Oh, and her, like, skirt all, like, uppity, yeah. I thought there was going to be some, like, jungle coming out the bottom.
I feel like we all have family members that were that image with a cigarette in hand, just like that. Yeah, that's spot on.
Right. It's amazing everyone didn't die in a fire in the 90s. That's what I'm learning. Like, essentially. And I love when Marge is telling Homer what kind of man she has to find, or he has to find.
Why should you have a better? Why should?
Yeah, exactly. Well, he needs to be good and honest and good looking and kind. Hey, why should she have a better husband than you do? Which, yes.
Right on. Yeah, that's a great line. Right after that, we get a little short segment with Bart in science class. They're playing with a chemical that he learns. One of the side effects of it is it'll kill grass.
How convenient.
He gets this great idea. How convenient. He gets this great idea, and there's a funny scene where Skinner is about to eat lunch, and he's talking about how his glorious tater tots are all perfect and whatnot. But then he kind of sniffs, and he can smell this chemical reacting with the chlorophyll. And he runs out to the clock tower to discover that Bart has written his name in the grass in 40-foot tall letters.
Which has a definite reference to the film Vertigo, when they do the zoom in, zoom out of the spiraling staircase in a bell tower. Not an accident. Definitely trying to shout out to some hilarious little moments. And yeah, I love that.
There's like
Is that the smell of sodium tetrasulfite bonding with chlorophyll? Thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Which I'm gonna knock Skinner a little bit later in this episode for being so smart in one aspect of science, and then not be so smart at English possibly later at the end of the episode. But we'll get into that. There's like 4 movie references in this one too, by the way. They reference a lot of different movies.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I like the explanation between Bart and Skinner after he gets mad at him, and he has that little scene with him where he starts saying, maybe it was another Bart, and Skinner's like, there are no other Barts. And just the way Bart goes, uh-oh, was like the first time where he really nailed that uh-oh, where you're just like, it was perfect, man. We talk about it all the time, all the little, like the Marge growls and the does and the uh-ohs. Like, it's not just what's being said, it's the way they say it and the timing and the length of how they say each one. Like, they change it all up, and there's just something, like, a little bit beautiful about it, I guess, is the best. I don't know I'm being very nostalgic right now, but I say meh all the time, and it started because I watched The Simpsons.
They invented that
There you
word
go.
insofar as that's a thing that exists.
Mm-hmm. I've said that my entire life because of The Simpsons.
So during this whole time that Bart is discovering Grass Killer and planning this prank, we also have Homer who's living up to his promise to Marge and trying to find Selma a mate. And he gets Terminator powers and starts he starts examining every male that he comes across with like the same kind of layout that Arnold Schwarzenegger had when he was first came to our timeline, I guess you could say. He's going through and he's finding all sorts of differences with people. I think Andy referenced earlier about Smithers was kind of a dick.
Smithers, Khan's a jerk. It's like, okay.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I like the Laramie sign one. Really cracked me up.
Yeah. Pros, smokes.
Cons,
A sign.
So Homer's at the bar using his Terminator powers trying to find a mate / drinking because, you're at a bar. Why not? And at this time, Bart's getting in trouble by Principal Skinner, and he's told to call his dad to come in to pick him up and have a meeting. And Bart calls the bar. Moe answers, and he takes the opportunity after asking Homer, and Moe goes, "Homer who?" And Bart decides to take the opportunity to turn this into a classic prank call when he says, "Is Homer sexual there?" Moe calls out, "Homosexual! Come on, I know one of you guys is a homosexual. Hey, why you little..." Skinner picks up the phone just in time for Moe to start screaming at him. Skinner then talks him down, which I thought it was really weird how scared Moe was of Principal Skinner. He really cowered. He really cowered to him. He's like, "I'm so sorry, Principal Skinner. I'll get you Homer right now."
Which the relative ages of these guys doesn't completely hold out, but when we see how Skinner interacts with the waiter at the restaurant, it's the same sort of a thing. He's got this really classic teacher authority voice, which people just fall to. And also you get the sense that maybe Moe was one of his former students, although I fully admit that Moe looks like way older than Principal Skinner, and that doesn't seem like it could have worked out.
Andy, do you hope when your powers evolve Pokemon style that you will develop that voice?
I had to use that voice earlier. Just so you know, yeah, that's hilarious. No, I'm never. That's several evolutions beyond me. I am.
You need to be a full-on Charizard. I don't actually play Pokemon, so I hope I didn't just butcher that. But I feel like that's a high evolution.
Yeah, I was also reaching for Pokemon knowledge to make like a knowledgeable Pokemon joke, and then I realized I didn't have that knowledge, and I felt really good about myself for a brief moment for not knowing more about Pokemon.
I can loosely tie one in. I think I played the original one like crazy when I was in 5th grade or 6th grade. I don't remember which. And you had to have stones to evolve some of the people. Do you need like some kind of jumping Mexican bean to evolve to your next level?
That's not even funny. That's just racist. But I gotta back up and mention, Homer goes to the Quickie Mart and gets a seafood burrito from a gas station.
What the fuck are you thinking,
and,
man?
Just like it makes my stomach quiver in oh no.
I also want to say, first of all, Bart knows Homer is at the bar. Well, he doesn't necessarily know, but it's a good bet.
Oh, he calls first.
Yeah. Secondly,
he doesn't call home.
Nor work.
I was going to say,
add.
secondly, it's during work hours and school hours, and Homer is at the bar drinking because he's trying to find somebody for his sister-in-law. Yeah, but he never
He's
goes
doing
to
Marge
work.
a
That's the
favor
issue. I'm
at
just
the
saying,
bar.
like, the time frame of it and works out for the episode, but in context, it's like,
Well, who uses their 6 days when they're actually sick, man? You use those on like days you feel good, so you can go have
First
a good
off,
time.
it's called a lunch beer, and there's nothing wrong with it. All kinds of professionals have lunch beers.
Yeah, this is America. It's called being business drunk.
If it's served in a fancy glass, it doesn't count. Those are the first.
Totally, yeah. Just don't drink a fucking Coors Light out of a bottle.
No. Just make sure it's poured into a glass like an adult would. Fine, within the rules. But yeah, no, totally. I totally picked that up.
Does a
As
red
a
Solo
kid,
cup
you're just
count?
like, oh yeah, sure, Dad's at the
yeah,
bar.
yeah.
And
But it also plays into the episode, so they don't have to make an extra phone call, and it sets up Homer having to be the one to go pick up Bart from school to keep the thread going.
Yeah, and plus the homosexual thing is just such a good fucking
my
joke.
God, that
I mean,
was my
honestly,
favorite part
it
of
comes
the
back
episode.
in later too.
We needed it. It's got an instant playback, and I love the Terminator vision regarding Skinner. It's so great. Pros dislikes the
Yes.
boy.
And uses big words.
Uses big words. We love all of these things.
But Cons is a possible homosexual.
That was my favorite part of the episode, actually.
It's well done, right?
Yes. Then I actually made a note after this because obviously we're getting to it. Homer goes to pick up Bart and meets Skinner and decides that he's a good match for for Selma. So he invites him over to dinner, and Skinner agrees to pay him back for all the times Bart's been a terrible student. And I love Homer's little Mr. Burns excellent that he gives right after that. And I wrote something down right here because I had laughed like 16 or 17 times up to this point in this one episode. And I wrote, is this the point? The show's been getting better as it goes along, but is this the point where they've started to figure out how to stick all these jokes with timing and everything together to where it starts hitting a good flow? But I feel like it kind of tapered off towards the second half of the episode. But up until this point, I felt like everything was spot on and like almost perfect from a comedy standpoint.
So, I really, in thinking back on it, think that maybe the writer, particularly hearing that thing that there's one writer who always does Selma, if he was still writing for Patty and Selma 14 years later when Patty comes out of the closet, like, this episode sets that up really, really well in a lot of ways, right? I mean, like, why is it even referenced, the gay joke? Like, I know it's a joke and all jokes are in there, but, like, you know, Homer asks him. He says, hey, you're not gay or anything, right? And, you know, that leads to one of...
Well, to be fair, he asked, like if you were to pick a partner, it'd be a female, or it'd be a woman, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Homer's pretty, like, he's fairly, like...
He's pretty blatant.
He is blatant, but he's also not, like, mean about it or, like, dismissive. Like, I get the sense that he would follow it up with, not that there's anything wrong with that, if that wasn't another show's joke.
But not in like the douchey, I'm trying to make myself sound like I don't care, but I'm totally judging you sort of way. It's like legitimately Homer just doesn't really give a fuck who you're fucking. Like he's like, whatever, you do you.
This is about him paying his favor back. That's all he cares about. Like, I don't think he's thinking.
Yeah,
in this
he doesn't
context
really
at
care
all.
what you're
to
doing.
which Skinner's response to, hey, you're not gay or anything, is these pants come off at night just like anybody else's. What does that mean?
That's the joke.
It's not
That's
a
the
no.
joke.
It's not a no. So he does agree to come over to dinner at the Simpsons home, which is actually just a ploy to hook him up with one of his unmarried, friends, as they'll talk about later. But I really like the at the very first, this is where kind of the catalyst for the episode happens. Homer's introducing Skinner to Selma, only he mistakes Selma for Patty and actually introduces Skinner to Patty, and he's kind of leaning back, laughing in his head, like, And I love the line, he goes, here we go, boy meets beast.
I love that. I also love that when Seymour comes in, there's this fabulously ridiculous instant replay of, like, a terrible sports collision going on in the background, where, like, this guy's just landing on his head in this most uncomfortable looking of angles, which, I don't know, just the sort of side note to, like, the attention to detail they took on some of this stuff, right? Like, you don't even need the TV to be on. It's not mentioned, but it's there just to give you one more thing to giggle at.
Yeah, definitely. There's a little, like, subtle joke in the background type of thing.
Also worth noting, Skinner doesn't have a mother yet.
He actually does. We met her earlier, and it's actually really odd because it's an episode where Bart actually lights a cherry bomb that blows up while she's using the restroom in the plumbing. And she's super pleasant, actually, is the thing. So there's actually a kind of an explanation or theory that Bart's cherry bomb turned her from like a pleasant older woman who is just very sweet and kind to the kind of crotchety old lady that we get in the later episodes.
Well, and also think about Skinner and the way he is in this episode. This is like our first really in-depth look at Skinner this much, and this is not the way that he is going to end up. He's like a commanding presence almost right now. He's being the wise old man that'll whoop your ass kind of with the way he's talking, and then as his character gets older in the series, he's a mama's boy basically that bends at everyone's will left and right. So I mean, everything's not completely set yet with him, but for this episode the character worked because Patty wouldn't like Principal Skinner at all the way he is right now. Well, obviously because she's a lesbian, but for this for the context of this episode, the things that she finds that she likes in him, he wouldn't have those abilities now, and she would not like him now.
Worth noting.
So, also worth noting, there's another connection here to Andy's first appearance on our show that I'd like us to all take a moment in awe over. In the first episode that Andy appeared on, one of the episodes we discussed was The Telltale Head, in which Bart and the bullies sneak into the movie Space Mutants 4. In this episode, as Skinner starts to fall for Patty, despite Selma's best efforts to woo him or attract him.
Selma also hated Niall.
Selma was getting denied left and right. It was actually really kind of sad, but Skinner was just infatuated immediately with Patty. He asked her at dinner if she would accompany him to go see the movie Space Mutants 5, Mutants Down Under.
Makes sense. I mean, you either go to space or Australia when you're getting up there in the number of movies you have.
Sure.
Well, I just watched Leprechaun 5, which goes to the ghetto, actually. I'm sorry, the hood. It's Leprechaun in the Hood.
That's right.
Which there's actually two of. There's actually two in the hoods, and then they go to... And the fucked up part is they actually go to space before they go to the hood.
Because there's nowhere worse you can go after space.
I'm just saying, space is the final... Space is the fucking final one, right?
So, speaking of Louisiana, they go and buy cigarettes at the Quickie Mart. Laramie High Tars, which is, first off, hilarious that there's a high tar version of cigarette. But one of my favorite just throwaway lines is, any lottery tickets? No. All right, 5.
Yeah.
One other note has to
Seems
be brought
appropriate.
up. The name of the the Springfield rotating restaurant. Did you guys see that?
No, I
The
missed
sit
that.
and
What was
rotate room. I'm just saying, like, I mean, the Simpsons don't often get a joke that dirty in there, but I really liked it. I mean, well, whatever.
Yeah, it's nice.
Every time
I like sitting on it and rotating. That's fine.
That's awesome. That's really
Also,
good.
the standardized
That's really
testing
fucking
never
good.
lies.
Yes.
Hashtag no child left behind.
So this is where we supposedly meet the squeaky voice Geek, which I honestly, I don't even feel like this should be considered his first appearance. It's so far from what the character becomes. But there's an interesting bit. Like I said, this actually happens in 1991, but Skinner talks to him and says, "You're from the class of 71, and he's nearly 30 years old." The math just doesn't line up on that.
Well, he graduated from elementary school in 1971. So let's say that's 6th grade, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
so
you're
then you
thinking
would
high
be like
school
10 or
years.
12 or so. So nearly,
Like
you
it-
could, okay, I
but
was thinking high school.
It's still kind of weird. I agree.
Yeah, no, but that justifies. I'm happy with that explanation. Thanks. You made my brain stop
That's what
hurting.
I do. I make people's brains stop hurting.
Nice, that's your profession. So Skinner and Patty go on a series of dates. Skinner is kind of asking Bart for advice and becoming more and more lenient on Bart as it happens. So originally Bart was supposed to reseed this entire football field one seed at a time, but he basically gets like the bottom row of his name done, and Skinner's like, what's Patty's favorite candy? And he's like, cherry cordials. And he's like, you can be
That's
done.
fine.
You learned your lesson.
Willie can do it.
Yeah, it's totally cool. It's totally cool. there's a sad moment when Selma's just this entire time basically sitting around the apartment waiting for Patty to come home, and she happens to look out the peephole right when Patty decides to give Skinner the very first kiss, and she warned him nothing more. But you can tell that there's some chemistry to some extent between them. I think that, to some extent, I know a lot of people believe in the sexual spectrum, and this is theoretically Patty kind of exploring the other side of her spectrum to some extent by dating this man, even though she is a homosexual person, as we will come to find out.
Let's imagine that Patty is in this moment a closeted homosexual who is going along with this because she feels forced along. There's still this moment where they do legitimately bond, right?
Yeah.
And I love what they bond over. They say, "Isn't it nice we hate the same things?" Which theoretically I think my whole marriage is based on, 100%. Secret to healthy living for certain. But yeah,
you don't have to like a whole lot as long as you hate the same shit,
I think that there's a lot
right?
to that. I really do. And I get the sense that you go on the stage just because kind of you feel like you have to, and then fine, I would kiss the guy, but you're not actually. I'm not interested in a physical relationship. Which, yeah. Also, Patty and Selma are taking microwave cookery classes. Where do I sign up for that? Because I might have way too many college degrees already, but I would love to take an actual class in cooking in the microwave.
Hey, you could get another useless doctorate, man.
Hey, are you saying that microwave ovens are useless? That's fucked up.
No, I'm going to be with you on this
man.
one, dude. I'm going to be right there with you. And not only that, I know the WIzKid's in, and I bet you we could find a fourth, so maybe we could get a discount.
I need to know when I stop the 5 minutes to stir everything up and then put it back in, and do I take 33 seconds on or off? That's important questions.
No, the real course you want to take is to buy which brand so you don't have to do any of that bullshit. You just want the stuff where you hit a number and you're done.
And how I make the 9 minutes go by faster so we wouldn't be in this mess.
Start 9 minutes earlier.
I like that we had another El Barto spray paint on the school. And we had the "I'm still a whiner" sign on there.
Bart is slowly taking this school over the more Skinner is focusing his time on Patty. And there gets to be a scene where Selma is kind of depressed and she asks Bart to come and cheer her up right after Skinner had shared the news that he was planning on proposing to Patty, which I kind of thought it was odd that Skinner wanted Bart to be the first to know, to be completely honest. I thought that was a strange choice.
Which 2-year salary? Holy crap. Holy freaking crap. The jewelry sales clerk tells Skinner that a good ring is a 2-year salary's worth.
I wish I would have been able to pull that off even once. That would have been amazing. Even though the commissions in the jewelry world suck a dick, if you're ever thinking about getting a job there, it's not fucking worth it. They all are fucking awful. But even the shitty ass commissions they pay on that figure would have been amazing.
Yeah. Well, I like the scene before the ring scene, though, where it showed Homer in the bar again, and it had that sign, the Moe's Happy Hours. It's only from 5 to 5:30.
It's a quick hour. There's a great scene a few episodes ago where they get some good news at the end of the episode, and Moe is like, for the next 15 minutes, all pitchers are half price, 1 per customer, no sharing.
Which is a great ploy, by the way. I bet he made a killing in that 15 minutes.
After going through Principal Skinner, which was the best choice Homer could find for Selma, his next best choice was Barney Gumble. Former military, was he former Army and current drunk, I would say? But there's a scene where Marge and Homer are talking, and Marge is like, she can't go out with him. Little do they know, Selma can hear them in the next room. And Homer says, hey, she's no prize pig herself.
Hey, at least he's being honest.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, Selma actually comes in while Marge is defending her and kind of more or less says the same thing of like, I'm past my prime. I need to take what I can get. Set me up on this date. I'm going to go. In the meantime, the relationship between Skinner and Patty is getting pretty serious. You can tell that Skinner is absolutely in love. He bought a 2-year salary ring, as we already mentioned. And there's another nod to a movie here where Skinner carries Patty up to the top of the clock tower in a scene very reminiscent of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I'll be honest, I did not connect that myself. I totally used the internet for help, but there you go. It is a reference nonetheless. No, man, I'm fine. I'm mildly above retardation. I don't need to be any better than that. It's cool. Low expectations are a great way to get through life.
Trying is the first step towards failure.
So, very reminiscent of how Bart signed his name into the football field, Skinner proposes in the same manner by using the chemical. What was it again, Andy? You're the doctor here. That's either correct or you're a creative enough writer that you made that up and it sounds convincing. So that's the way he proposes to Patty, and there's a kind of it's a neat moment. I don't know what I'd say. I guess it's sad, bittersweet maybe would be the way I'd use to describe it, where Patty basically explains that while she loves him and knows that he loves her, she's a twin. And any man that loved her enough to be worthy of her hand in marriage would have to first understand that she could never leave her twin, which is kind of a catch-22, as she puts it.
I brought this up when we started this first episode. I'm not sure on this one. Sometimes I could be a grammar Nazi, but I'm not 100% certain on this. Is there supposed to be a comma between me and Patty on that lawn? Is it supposed to be marry me, comma, Patty? Because I thought marry me, Patty isn't the correct way to do it. And I just thought, Skinner's so smart, he should have put a fucking comma at the end of that thing.
Well, quite frankly, we want all the listeners we can get, so I hope all of the English majors are listening and judging you right now.
Getting back to the episode here, I actually really like the scene where like Skinner's completely heartbroken on the steps of the elementary school, and it's the whole like he loses his love but then reconnects with his old love, which is the school. And I don't know why it's like so dramatic and stupid, but I love that last little moment where it's doing the Gone with the Wind moment there, where he's like, tomorrow is another school day kind of thing. I like that. I thought it was great.
Yeah. There's actually one other movie reference right before that, actually, and that was where they're saying their final goodbyes, Patty and Skinner, and Patty actually says, "Goodbye, sweet principal," which is a kind of spoof of "Goodbye, sweet prince" from Hamlet. Then we see Skinner looking up, kind of sad, and he looks up to the sky, and he sees the school, the elementary school, says, "Bart Simpson, owner and proprietor." And that's where we get to the moment that Richie just referred to, where he kind of decides that's the moment where his true love is being principal, and he is about to take back his school. So we get to a scene where Patty has now left Skinner, and she goes to collect her sister, who is on a date at Moe's Tavern with Barney Gumble. Selma asks Patty, "Did you throw away your last chance at happiness for me?" And Patty says, "Yes, I did."
Brief but sweet.
And Selma says, "Thank you." Selma goes ahead and ditches Barney. At first she pretends to be apprehensive about it, but then is basically, she just kind of groans. But my interpretation of that groan was, fuck it, he's kind of a pig. And Barney is just really excited that he now has the entire picture to himself.
And you can see part of his shirt sticking out through his fly.
Yeah. I didn't catch that, I'll be honest. That's funny.
The flies flying around and everything, but yeah.
So this episode ends with Principal getting his backbone back and taking over his school and going back to Bart's original punishment, where he is now reseeding the entire field one seed at a time, and all is reset in the Simpsons universe once more. How about you, Rich? What about that? What about yourself or that book of yours? Would you like to add anything on Principal Charming?
The book points out there is a sign in front of the church at one point in this episode that reads Peterson Wedding at 2 and Hayride to Heaven at 8
All right,
o'clock.
guys, that pretty much wraps up our conversation.
But
Like
it
I
also
mentioned
points
at the
out
top
Bart's
of the show,
disciplinary
unfortunately,
file that you see very
our
quickly.
friend
It
Andy had a
includes
bit
write-ups
of an
for
audio issue, and we lost the
tardiness,
last 20 minutes or so of his
absenteeism,
conversation.
making faces.
We did
and
get
good
into
behavior.
quite a bit of good stuff about Groundskeeper Willie, as it was his first appearance, but don't worry, it's not his last, and we will definitely be discussing more Groundskeeper Willie on this show. There you go. Dr.
awesome.
Andrew Breseño.
All right,
is an
man. Well, I think
associate
that's going to
professor
wrap
at
up this
Northwestern
episode of the
State
Best Darn Diddly
University.
Review Show.
If you enjoyed
First
what
and
he had to say
foremost,
on the show
let
today and
me
you live in
thank
the
Andy
DFW
once
area,
more. First of
Dr.
all, one of
Andy
my
is
best
actually gonna be
friends
having a creative
who's most
writing
likely
reading
about to
going
be on a
with
national
himself,
watch
as well as
list.
a couple of other
I
writers.
really,
It's gonna be
really-
the Pegasus reading series. That's
I
gonna be at the
really,
Kettle
really
Art Gallery on
appreciate.
December 12th, and that's going to be at 7:30 p.m.
I just wanted to say, Andy, before we continue on here, that
I really
it's always
appreciate
a genuine
talking to you, man.
pleasure
We have a
having
lot
you
of
on the
fun when
show.
you're on the episode. You bring up a lot of great points, and we really appreciate your insight.
So,
Go
love you,
ahead and
buddy,
start
and
looking
I hope
ahead
you
to
can come
season
back
3
every
because
season
we would
with
love
us.
to have you back again if you're game
Yeah,
for
definitely,
the
man.
torture.
Definitely a pleasure. We'll get you some audio equipment that was made in America next time, so it might work better. So, hey, Rich, is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Well, as always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at TheWiz_Kid23. And I also want to say our show has its own Twitter page as well. So if you want to follow the show, it's at Best Darn Diddly, and Diddly is Diddly.
Excellent, yeah. Go ahead and follow at The Fans Podcast while you're on Twitter. That's Steve the Fan, and we are very grateful and proud to be on the Fans Podcast Network. For me, I am at MrMostDaysOff. That works on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, pretty much everywhere. You can also find me at Voices of Wrestling, where I do a weekly Lucha Underground review. Other than that, we look forward to seeing you next week when we are going to be back to review Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And Bart's Dog Gets an F.
Woof, woof, baby.